Good afternoon. My name is Marion Ebel. I am a policy manager at Lighting Europe. Today, I will be speaking to you about the concerns of the lighting industry on product compliance online and how we recommend to address this issue in EU legislation. For those who may not know us, Lighting Europe is a trade association based in Brussels and representing lighting manufacturers from across Europe. We have 33 members, a combination of companies and national associations. In total, we represent around 1,000 companies, 80% of which are SMEs, 100,000 jobs, and around 20 billion of annual turnover. In 2016, we adopted a strategic roadmap, which we reassessed in 2019 with the objective to deliver the value of lighting. Our assessment is that our industry is making progress, harnessing the potential of LEDification and sustainability, and that now the increase of value to society will come from intelligent lighting systems and human-centric lighting. And that to achieve that value for people, for society, and our industry, we need a healthy regulatory framework. In practice, that means sound and simple rules that are well implemented and, of course, well enforced. The better enforcement of EU rules is a priority for our members, which resulted in the creation of a dedicated working group within Lighting Europe. The reason why we decided to create this working group is that we have strong concerns about the large amount of non-compliant products that are available on the EU market, and especially online through online marketplaces. Free riding, for instance, is considered one of the most important issues for electrical and electronic equipment. The OECD estimates that extended producer responsibility fees are unpaid for around 5 to 10% of the value of these products placed on the market in OECD countries. Eucolite, the Association of Collection and Recycling Organizations for Lamps and Lighting, undertook a study in 2019. For this study, they have selected 3,000 products made available on sale on online marketplaces in 10 countries. Non-compliance was detected for a wide range of products, but they've noticed that LED light bulbs were in particular problematic. And they've established that the non-compliance was in the range of 78 to 100%, which is of course very important. Another example is linked to chemical legislation. It's also estimated that 1 in 4 imported products are non-compliant with this legislation. And to give you an example as well of what authorities are doing at the national level, as you can imagine, products placed online and on online marketplaces are also sometimes targeted in their checks and tests. The French authority, for instance, the DGCCRF, tested 15 lighting chains in 2018, products that they presumed to be non-compliant. And it resulted that they were absolutely right, because none of them were actually compliant, and even 67% of them were considered dangerous. Every day, the European Commission receives also alerts from national authorities concerning dangerous non-food products found in their respective markets. These alerts, they are sent through the so-called RAPEX system. On the screen, you can see some of the products that we have been notified in the past weeks and that we have selected for the presentation today. If I pick just a few of them, so on the left, what you can see here with my mouse. So we have lighting chains reported from Hungary and originating from a third country to the EU. Why has it been considered non-compliant? Well, the cable is not properly anchored and too thin, accessible wires have inadequate insulation, the dimension of the main plugs are smaller than required, so it could overheat or lead to burns or fire. So, in conclusion, it is non-compliant with the Low Voltage Directive and with EU standards. And it's important to note that it's quite often that we see reports on lighting chains because it's considered potentially as a dangerous product, but it is very crucial to realize that the issue is far from being limited to this type of products. Let me take another example. So if you look at the desk lamp more on the right side of the screen, so that's another example, again, originating from a third country to the EU. And why was this product considered non-compliant? Well, the wires and insulation material are damaged through repeated use, so it could lead to an electric shock. Again, it does not comply with the Low Voltage Directive. Because of COVID-19, people resorted much more to online sales channels for lighting products in general, but also for UVC, as they are known to have disinfection properties. And we've seen an increasing number of non-compliant UVC products reported via RAPEX. So that's another example of what we've seen reported recently. All these products that I've just mentioned were made available for sale online. It's important to note that the scope of RAPEX remains limited, as it focuses only on dangerous products. For lighting products, it usually means that the products reported are non-compliant with the low voltage directive. But there are, of course, many other potential non-compliance aspects, like, as I mentioned before, non-registration with WE schemes, non-compliance with chemical legislation or eco-design and energy labeling EU rules, just to name a few. The presence of all these non-compliant products on the EU market and online, of course, it puts consumer safety at risk. It also distorts the competition between companies that invest in compliance and rogue traders. As Lighting Europe, we've done an internal survey of our members, and we came to the conclusion that they invest up to 25% of annual turnover in compliance. What does it mean in practice? Well, if we take product costs, for instance, it can be laboratory costs or research and development work done to ensure compliance, costs to comply with new legislation, so external database entry for each product, or repackaging costs due to the change in labeling requirements. Or, for instance, the purchase of standards, compliance with scheme fees, as we said before, batteries, etc. Of course, we could also put it in the broader context of the EU priorities for the coming years. You may have heard of the Green Deal. If you did not, I actually suggest that you listen to a separate podcast recorded by Lighting Europe Secretary General on this topic. A big priority for the EU is to stimulate renovation across Europe to reach climate goals and also improve citizens' well-being. And this has also been identified as a key driver for Europe's recovery post-COVID-19. Of course, with such a big push for renovation, it is crucial that only good quality products are sourced. The question is, of course, how do we address this issue? Part of the solution is and could be for authorities, market surveillance and customs authorities to perform more checks. I've already mentioned the example of the French authority to you earlier. Another example of market surveillance authorities' work in terms of better enforcement and testing non-compliant products is the EbelPolicy initiative. This is an EU project founded by the European Commission and involving market surveillance authorities from across Europe. The first project took place a few years ago between 2015 and 2017, and it focused on checking products against eco-design and energy labeling EU rules. 86 products, lamps, have been tested during this exercise, and it resulted that up to 54% of the products were non-compliant with packaging information or technical documentation, and that in total only 14% of the tested models were fully compliant, which is again quite a telling number. There is another exercise that EbelPolicy will carry out, and for lighting it will take place as of September 2021. Lighting Europe is involved. We are a member of the advisory board of EbelPolicy 3, and the model will be similar to the first exercise that was done a few years ago. The idea will be to screen products and test some of them against the new eco-design and energy labeling rules that will start to apply as of September 2021. As Lighting Europe, we are contributing to this work through, for instance, the publication of guidelines. We published last year a set of guidelines on the new eco-design and energy labeling rules. Another version is now available on our website, which includes answers to the questions we've received, but also some corrections based on the new text that was published by the European Commission. With these guidelines, we aim at supporting companies to better understand and apply new and complex rules, but also to help authorities to enforce them. Lighting Europe believes that authorities' verifications are really important. We strongly support the efforts that were made under these different activities that I've just shared with you. And we also believe that it is key to allocate more resources to them so that they can actually increase their capacity to check and test products. But we also have to take into account that the volume of lighting products on the EU market is big, and the amount of rules that market surveillance authorities or customs authorities have to check these products against is also very important. That's why we really believe that addressing product compliance online cannot just be resolved through the activities of authorities, but that we need a change in EU legislation. And by change, we mean that we need to allocate fair liability for non-compliant products, including for online marketplaces. There is a growing awareness of the need to address these challenges from online trade in Europe. And that's reflected in the debates we have in Brussels, and we see the question popping up as well in various instruments, legislation or guidance documents. To give you just a brief explanation before I go into more details. So the EU recently adopted a new legislation, so-called Compliance and Enforcement Regulation, aimed at addressing the growing number of non-compliant products put for sale on the EU market, this time both online and offline. The European Commission is also currently revising the Blue Guide, which is a guidance document that provides CE marking information and also information about how to interpret and enforce EU product rules. And this current version is looking at, revising the text to match the compliance and enforcement regulation I've just mentioned. The Commission is also assessing the need to revise its horizontal directive on consumer product safety. The GPSD, so-called, only applies to a small part of lighting products, as we have the low voltage directive, of course, but it just gives us an idea and helps understand, the approach that the European Union is taking on this issue. And finally, the EU is looking at revising its rules governing e-commerce, including the role and responsibilities of online intermediaries. And today I will focus on two of the items that I've just shared with you, which are the Compliance and Enforcement Regulation and the e-commerce directive. The Compliance and Enforcement Regulation, it was adopted in 2019. And as I said before, it aimed at addressing the lack of product compliance on the EU market, both offline and online. So what does it really bring? What does it change? So the legislation, it details the powers of market surveillance authorities. It puts in place some obligations and mechanisms for them to cooperate better and much more than they do right now. It also encourages cooperation between the industry and market surveillance authorities, which is a step that we warmly welcome at Lighting Europe because we think it's very important. And the text of the legislation also explains that, should you carry out your own market surveillance program, you can share the data with the authorities and they can decide to act upon them. So that's really a new type of activity that did not exist before. And as Lighting Europe, we have some of our members at the national level that are carrying out this kind of programs. So we have some experience and, best practices that we can share with market surveillance authorities in this context. The legislation also requires to have the same attention given to enforcing EU rules online and offline. And in particular, a point that was interesting for us is when it comes to online, it includes new responsibilities for fulfillment service providers as a potential responsible economic operator designated in the EU. And I would like to focus a little bit on this notion of responsible economic operator and bring it to your attention. So for certain products, including lighting products, they can only be placed on the EU market if there is a so-called economic operator established in the EU, and that will be responsible for verifying that EU declaration of conformity, the technical documentation have been drafted and are available on request, and also cooperating with market surveillance authorities upon request, providing information again, documentation, and potentially also taking corrective actions. The responsible person can be the manufacturer, the importer, an authorized representative designated by the manufacturer, or the fulfillment service provider, as I mentioned before. And this obligation will apply as of the 16th of July next year and will be reflected in the new version of the Blue Guide that I mentioned at a few slides before. So the compliance and enforcement regulation is bringing some improvements. Definitely having a responsible person in the EU is a step in the right direction. But the main question remains of who is actually liable for the non-compliance of the products that are put on the EU market and puts customer safety at risk and also distorts competition. And the issue of liability in the online sales context is addressed in the e-commerce directive. So the directive is quite old. It was adopted in 2000, and it, as you can imagine, lays down rules for online services in the EU single market. We believe that to tackle product non-compliance online, you need to allocate liability, including for the online intermediary, and in our case, online marketplaces. In its current form, the directive states that online intermediaries, if acting as mail, conduit, caching, or hosting services, they're exempted from liability for the illegal content listed on their platform unless they are made aware of it. So it means that their only responsibility is to promptly withdraw illegal content once made aware of it. The European Commission has announced its intention to update the e-commerce directive as part of the Digital Services Act and to be published by the end of the year. This is a decision that we warmly welcome again. The directive was adopted 20 years ago, and we honestly do not believe that it is fit for purpose anymore. Also, the business models targeted at the time have evolved significantly. EU legislation has really yet to fully reflect the role that these platforms play nowadays, and that's what we are urging policymakers to do, to adapt the regime accordingly and to create an actual set of obligations specifically for online marketplaces. What does it mean in practice? Well, we've divided this set of obligations in two categories, reactive and proactive. Reactive means what I said before, that online marketplaces have the obligation to remove products once they are made aware of it, if it's considered non-compliant. Of course, we believe that this regime should be kept in place and should be clarified and improved. So that means that you should have a harmonized process through different online marketplaces. You should make sure that the products are removed as quickly as possible and is possible within 24 hours, that you inform the consumers that they've bought something that is non-compliant and start a recall, and of course that you collaborate with market surveillance authorities in the removal of flagging non-compliant products from the market. But this is only reactive. And if you think about the issue, the problem is not just about eliminating the problem once it exists. It's more about making sure that we prevent this product from accessing the EU market. That is why we believe that the most important obligations that need to be put in place are actually proactive. So what does it mean in practice? In Brussels, we call it the Know Your Seller obligation, and that means that online marketplaces that should check before a product is listed on their website, the identity of the seller. If they're a responsible person established in the EU, and especially an importer, if that's not the case, then the online marketplaces should actually take the responsibility and obligations of the importer if the product is listed on its platform. Other ways to check would be to verify if there is a producer registered with a WE scheme, or if they are registered in the VAT database. So basically doing some checks before a product is put on the website to make sure that it fulfills a certain number of requirements and to minimize the risk of having non-compliant products put on their platform. Another idea would be to provide information to their sellers about the obligations that exist under EU law. And as I said, it's really not just about taking down products that are non-compliant, because it's already too late. And products tend to reappear under another denomination on the same website or also on another platform. So we really need to prevent them from being listed and sold in the first place. Online sales, they should not offer a competitive advantage to suppliers of non-compliant products who have no legal presence in the EU. So we really think that this set of obligations should also apply to all marketplaces, irrelevant of their size, but also place of establishment, which means in the EU but also if they are established in a third country and targeting EU customers. As Lighting Europe, our role is to share the concerns of the lighting industry and what are our recommendations. So in doing so, we are trying to speak with the key actors from the different institutions. At the moment, as I said before, the revision of the e-commerce directive is work in progress by the European Commission. We expect the proposal by the end of the year. So we are speaking with the different services in the Commission in charge of the proposal, but also in charge of better enforcement. So for the proposal, it would be DG Connect. They're usually in charge of digital policies for the EU, and they're leading on this Digital Services Act. But we also talk to DG Grow in relationship to this file, but also on their work they do on better enforcement and making sure that the internal market is working as well as possible. The European Parliament is also a very important institution on this file at the moment. They've been working on what we call own initiative reports on the Digital Services Act, the revision of the e-commerce directive, but also product safety in the context of the potential revision of the General Product Safety Directive. And they have put forward some recommendations to the Commission that will serve as input to their work. To conclude this presentation and the remarks I've made, this is of course priority for the lighting industry to make sure that we source good lighting products, that we have no non-compliant products on the market, but it is a problem for many industries as well. We've seen other industries very involved in this file and also representative of consumer organizations. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. If you would like to hear more from me, you have my contact details on the slides. You're more than welcome to contact me.